Hi, everybody. We're Just Got Played, and we are talking about our favorite crowdfunded games. So I think most of the games that you hear about today are going to be from Kickstarter, but that's certainly not the only crowdfunding system out there. There's a lot out there. Indiegogo was one, actually started before Kickstarter. There were some like Rocket Hub or something, ones that have come and gone. There are new ones coming. GameFound, I think, is pretty much exclusively for tabletop. Backer Kit, which started as a gap that Kickstarter didn't fill, now has their own crowdfunding system, like Backer Kit for crowdfunding or something it's called. I don't know. So these things are just coming out of the woodwork because it's super important to the industry. It's letting a lot of publishers get in the game. Print runs for games can be expensive, so getting the money up front is cool. So yeah, a lot of these games are going to come from Kickstarter, and I'm going to put a chapter in the YouTube video right here called Steven's Rant, so you can just skip this if you want. But I'm going to rant here for a second because, and just speaking for myself, not for the whole group, if you are a publisher and you want to bring a game to a crowdfunding site, don't use Kickstarter. I am so sick of Kickstarter, and I won't talk too much about it, but go read the Mag Holder project on Kickstarter, which was a complete fraud. People investigated it who were backers. They pointed out every problem with it. It was some lady in Colorado was fronting it, although it was clearly a Chinese company. They had videos that weren't the thing. They had people on there who didn't exist as the people from the company. It was the guy who had the STL files for these plastic holders with magnets was like, these are my designs, but I'm not part of this project. I don't know what's going on. And everybody in the comments messaged Kickstarter, said, this is just fraudulent. The creators came out and said, oh, sorry, we were lying, that we really are just these guys at a factory in China. And their funding went down from 100,000 to 50,000 before it closed. Kickstarter did nothing to stop this, and they just disappeared people's money. Like, there's nothing's been heard of them since. So Kickstarter does nothing to protect the integrity of the crowdfunding system, and you should avoid them. And that's on top of them deciding that they wanted to use the blockchain. They have no idea what blockchain is, why they want to use it. They just keep sending out messages, trying to explain it, but boil down to, it's going to be cool, we promise, I swear. And that is actually one reason why several creators, because of the environmental impact of blockchain and there's no reason to use it, have decided to leave Kickstarter. So anyway, this is my little rant. Everybody stop using Kickstarter until they get their acts together, because it is a black mark and a shame on the industry. There you go. My own little personal rant. I had to get that out. I made a joke video. Lloyd helped me with it. We made a joke video to sort of promote a local game store that I pretended was my thoughts on Kickstarter. And there were some people in the comments who were like, oh, we wanted to hear your actual thoughts on Kickstarter. Now you know my thoughts on Kickstarter.
Yeah, I am a Kickstarter. What you ask for.
I am a Kickstarter super backer. I have spent thousands of dollars on Kickstarter, backing hundreds of products over the years, and I hate that place, and I don't want to use it anymore. Not to put too strong a point on it or anything.
Well, not to piggyback onto you, but integrity of the system is one thing, but when you're talking about real people's money just going up in smoke, that's where you draw the line. Integrity is fine, but people losing money is a real thing. So.
Yeah, it's awful. I understand COVID, shipping problems, people in over their heads. There are projects that have lost money, not fraudulent. It's the fraud that really sort of burns me and the people who do nothing about it. All right. Now on the next happy note, though, let's talk about a whole lot of good games that possibly never would have existed if it hadn't been, maybe even some companies that never would have existed if it hadn't been for crowdfunded games. All right. And I will let Tiffany start us off. We're each going to talk about two games. So what is one of your favorite crowdfunded games?
All right. So one of my favorite crowdfunded games is a game where you get to take on the persona of a person who has a what is that word? I'm not a fancy person, so I don't know this word. What's the fancy word for a grape farm?
A vineyard?
Thank you. So you play a person who has a vineyard. I don't drink wine.
No, she just drinks Moscato.
Moscato, because it's super sweet and it's like dessert. So you play a person who has a vineyard, and you are planting grapes and growing grapes and harvesting grapes and smashing grapes and creating different bottles of sparkling wines and white wines and lush wines. And you are trying to create it's a worker placement that you're trying to just rule the wine making world. It is there is an expansion for it. A thing called Tuscany, and so it's just a really great game. It's pretty heavy and it makes you think really hard, and I love it. And it is viticulture. Sorry, not vineyard. Vineyard is the new word I learned today. That means a place where you grow grapes. But the game that I like is viticulture.
There's actually a ton of content for this game. I think this is one of those games. You've probably heard me, if you've watched us at all, rail about too much for too many games. I think this one actually, it just gets better. Every little bit that they come out for it, the little visitor packs make the cards better. Tuscany made the game better. It gave you more options. Recently, Viticulture World came out, which is a co-op version of that, which we did a live playthrough of and all of that. And that's fantastic also. So if you're at all interested in this, there's a lot of different ways that you can play this game. And I think all of them are awesome. So.
Yeah, and this is one of those examples of crowdfunding building a company, right? So Stonemaier Games was nothing, and then they came to Kickstarter with the original Viticulture, and then they went crazy, on crowdfunding. Crazy as in getting a large amount of money,
right?
not actually going overboard or anything. And then they eventually they backed away from crowdfunding because they had an established name, and crowdfunding is a lot of work. But it's interesting, right? There was the original Viticulture, and then there was the second edition when it added things like the Grande, and then there was the Tuscany expansion, and there was the collector's edition, and then there was the essential edition. And I think they finally settled the essential edition is the sort of final version of Viticulture. But it's interesting to see the sort of evolution of that game and that company, Stonemaier Games, as a result of crowdfunding. So
agreed.
Yeah, good game, man. Good pick for this list. All right, JJ, why don't you tell us what one of your picks is?
All right, so I went with the game that I just love playing. Not gonna lie, I just love playing it. I only have one gripe: is when you put stuff in your bag, you don't get everything out. You put everything back in the bag, and it drives me crazy. But I still love the game. It is Orleans. Basically, it's a bag builder. You got all your different chips. They all the knights and farmers and whatever people, priests, and all this stuff. And you put them in the bag, and you draw it out of the bag. You start with a hand, just chip count of 6 or 5 or whatever, and you can increase it all the way up to 8 or whatever it is. But every round, you got to put all your chips back in the bag. So it's a bag builder, but it breaks that mechanism of drawing everything out and then being able to put everything back in. So if you get your bag too big, then you could just be pulling the same chip or whatever out over and over again. But so, man, how do you explain this? It's not really a worker placement, but just like an action selection game. There you go. Action selection game with a board. So you have your different actions that you can have on the side. Each one of the chips has a different color, knight, farmer, or whatever, and you get to do that action. And then you also have a little board on the side where you go through the different towns and you can pick up goods, and you're leaving your little building out there. So the more buildings you leave out on the one side of the board, and the more actions you can do on your board to get you the more victory points. And the gray chips, I forgot what those people are called. The
monks
priests or something. Monks,
scholars or monks.
Scholars. They have a little track on the bottom, and the farther you get along on there, like you get more stars, and the more stars you have times the number of little peoples that you got, and how many houses you put out on the board gets you more victory points. So just get a bunch of goods, get a lot of stars, and the more victory points you can get. So I understand on the crowdfunding they got the all-in package, because I know when I first played the game, you have the little retirement board where you can send your workers off for the rest of the game and they sit out there. There was a lot of different boards out there and they were very hard to get. They were not easy to find. So this crowdfunding, I believe, gets you get all the different boards, if I'm not mistaken. So that's great because they had a little Castle in Burgundy type deal where you had all these very expensive expansions that were hard to find, and you can only eBay them because they didn't have very many prints of it when the game first came out. So I was very upset when I played this game like 5 times, and then somebody had this like the fancy board, and I'm like getting ready to retire my person. I'm like, that's a different board. I was very upset when I saw this because I messed up my whole strategy for the game because I'm used to where everything is and what I need 3 coins, and then I need a book. So I go here for books and it's something else. So it messed me all up. So now I want to get everything. So hopefully somebody has it on sale or something and can get it on like a cheaper price because I need all the things. But Orleans, if somebody's going to play it, I'm usually in. I don't even care. Just especially if you haven't played it before. Great game.
Yeah. I have a bunch of the extra tiles. I don't think I have any of those extra boards though. Huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always just played with
6 of them.
Yeah, I've only played with that starting one. I didn't even know. All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Messes up the whole game because you can get coins and books. That's another way to get books is putting your people up there. And it's just like that whole thing threw my mind off. And I was like, oh God.
Have you played with the co-op expansion, JJ?
No, and I'm highly offended you suggested that.
I played the Invasion expansion. I think it's excellent.
If there's any kind of co-op expansion or something, I immediately throw it in the garbage.
No.
No, I can't. The only co-op I play is Legendary. Everything else is no, I can't. Even my partners, my whole friend, none of us like co-ops. If you say, well, it's a co-op, and then nobody's like, nope, I'm out. So there's no co-oping again. Everybody, all my partners know. They're like, no, I want to beat you. I'm like, okay, fine, whatever.
We both like Orleans very much. I like the competitive game, and she likes the co-op game just a little bit better each way. So, but very good game.
Yeah, there are 4 people here that like Orleans. But Lloyd, tell us why one of your favorite crowdfunded games is not Orleans.
So I know JJ just said he loves co-ops, so we'll follow that up with co-op that is also from a company that got built on Kickstarter. And lots of people are now saying that they should leave Kickstarter because they're too big for it. But that is Marvel United, and the company is CMON. Cool Mini or not, I don't know what they go by now, but that's what they started as. But Marvel United is a very light co-op. The base game essentially is you are a hero, one of the Avengers, and you're fighting a bad guy. The bad guy is basically moving around the board, and he's putting out his deck puts out other little thugs and civilians on these city tiles that you're trying not to let overrun. And the only way to defeat the bad guy are there's 3 missions in the middle of the board, which are defeat thugs, rescue civilians, or clear threats. So each of the city spaces has a threat that's related to the bad guy you're fighting. You have to do at least 2 of those missions in order to start actually attacking the bad guy. It's completely co-op. The cool thing about it, aside from the table presence, which is what originally got my kind of caught my eye, is the way that it tells a story as it is. There's a storyline out. When you play your cards, you're playing them in a big circle around the board. And the heroes piggyback off of the previous player's turn. So if I play a card that's got a punch and a move on the bottom of the card, then the next player who plays their card will get my punch and my move in addition to whatever they've played. And it keeps going around the table like that. So you always get the previous player's icons, not their special abilities, but you get their icons. And it's a lot of table talk. It's a strict co-op. You're working together to try and get the best mix of symbols out on the board. And every character plays a little bit differently. If you got all of the massive expansions that they put out, if you have any of those, the character depth gets a lot more different. Like there's only like 4 symbols in the game, so the disbursement of how they work and the special abilities the characters get kind of make or break the characters, and they're not all balanced. Some of them are really good and some of them are really terrible, and the designers have said it was designed that way because they didn't want Spider-Ham to be on the same level as a Hulk. So playing with Spider-Ham is going to be bad. You're not going to get a lot of mileage from that character. But where the game really shines are the villains. The villains really mix up how the game is played. All the heroes are pretty straightforward, but how the villains affect the gameplay is what really kind of defines how the game is going to play. They've just did the X-Men United that just finished shipping this year, and there's still people left in the Marvel Universe, so maybe they're going to do yet another one. Who knows? But I probably won't be on that train. I've already got like almost 300 minis to paint, so I'm going to take a break after the 2 expansions because I don't have any room left. I've got rid of like 20 boxes, and I still have boxes. So that's my Kickstarter crowdfunded game.
Yeah, I think particularly games with minis do really well in crowdfunding. And those are sort of, I think those are harder to sell through the distribution retail chain because, you know, every one of those steps adds cost, and those minis, you know, have a cost both in size and, you know, packaging and shipping and just production. So, you know, I think, yeah, this is another situation where crowdfunding makes a whole lot of sense, having a whole lot of minis.
Yeah, they said that they were going to put some of these expansions out, but you can get some of them through like Amazon. But as far as them being on store shelves, the only 2 games that made it out was Marvel United and X-Men Marvel United. And that was it. The expansions are nowhere to be found on store shelves, but they do like Amazon sellers do kind of package, I think the Spider-Verse one and a couple of the others I've seen online only, so you can get like a mix together.
Plus, it's hard on the game shop. You get something like this, that's a whole shelf in a game shop. You know, it's all about product and cycling, and it's really hard to do with these giant things. So it's like you said, it's just a good forum for this kind of game is crowdfunding. So,
yeah. And, you know, again, when I think about crowdfunding, I think Simon and Stonemaier are the first game publishing companies that I think of. But for my first pick, I'm going with another company that I think was, as far as I know, was built off of crowdfunding, and that's Roxley Games, because as far as I know, their first game was Steampunk Rally. And this was one that I backed, I don't know when this was, 2016 or earlier than that, maybe, I don't know. It was a while ago. And, you know, it was sort of in the early days of crowdfunding, and it just looked cool, right? Very slick presentation. The theme grabbed me. It's got dice and, you know, drafting these cards and putting these components together to build your engine to race around this track. Just everything about it looked visually cool, but, you know, had no idea if it was going to be a good game. But then I got it, and I was pleasantly surprised because my group typically, you know, is a larger player count, and this is a game that you can play has simultaneous play. So even with 7 players, the game, you know, hums along, and I was really happy with the components that it came with. Really happy with how the gameplay turned out, and the presentation of it wasn't a sort of a bait and switch, which I've seen from some crowdfunded projects since. But the other thing about this one, and you know, JJ's pick falls in this category too, right? There was like a deluxeified version for Orleans. Steampunk Rally, there was a deluxeified Tesla version with like fancy wooden tiles and like plastic credit card almost like cards and like black onyx something. I don't know what those kind of cards are called. Like it had all kinds of just fancy, crazy, stupid components for no reason. But and again, that's one of those things I think crowdfunding is good for, right? Making a deluxified version of a game. Like, I mean, how big is the market for that really? Well, you can test the waters with something like this. But so it was interesting that Steampunk Rally had that Tesla, handmade Tesla option to go along with their, mass market version of the game. But Steampunk Rally, one of my favorite games of all time. And I just, was in that crowdfunding mode early on, and it was one of the ones I grabbed, and I always think of as early successes to me. All right, so Erock, what have you got for one of your picks?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to cross over with your publishing house, because Roxley also produced Brass Birmingham, which is not only one of the best crowdfunding games ever made. In my book, it's one of the best games ever made. This game is absolutely fantastic. And this is kind of a weird one, too, because I never played Brass. The original Brass was, quite frankly, ugly and a little boring. And it just looked like something I didn't want to play. And that was out for a very long time. There were people that loved it, and I just didn't listen because it's just so ugly. It looked terrible. And there was nothing that was crowdfunded about that game. That was just a game that was put out, like games are, on a shelf, and people bought that game. And then, 15 years later, maybe, that Roxley came out with the deluxified versions of that, which they now call Brass. I'm going to do this for you, Steve. Brass Lancashire and Brass Birmingham. Excellent. Yeah, I did it. So they come out with both a reprint, a fancified edition of the first, and they came out with a second game in the same theme universe, as it were, I guess, and that's Brass Birmingham. Quite frankly, they're both fantastic. We got both of them through the crowdfunding, although not actually during the crowdfunding. I just had such a bad taste in my mouth from seeing old pictures of Brass that I just shoved this to the side the moment I saw it. And then, quite frankly, I went to a buddy's house one Saturday, and this is the game we played, and it just entranced me, really. Babe will tell you, I came home from that day, I was like, this game's great. I can't believe this game, how awesome this was. It was so much fun playing this game. And went on and was like a late pledge right there. Got both games, like the deluxified version with the iron clays and all that. I know I haven't really talked about the game itself. It's a pretty heavy economic game. But as far as it goes, I love it because you do have your own player board, but it doesn't function for anything except for pulling pieces off. The entire game happens on the main game board, and the players make that game space, and then they exploit that game space together. And it's both cooperative and competitive at the same time. I mean, don't get me wrong. This is a full-on competitive game. It's just that a lot of the things that you do kind of help other people, too, because you can put coal out on the board. Now there's coal, so anybody that needs coal, if they're linked up to it, they can use your coal. Maybe you don't want them to use your coal because I built that coal. I need that coal. But at the same time, if you empty my building, it flips over and now it scores. So there's this duality of this game where you're kind of helping other people, but it's really only because it's helping you in the end. So it's just this really creative game space and headspace that I absolutely adore in this game. Babe and I love it. This is Brass Birmingham. And this is my choice for one of my 2 crowdfunding games. You should check it out. I think it's pretty hard to get the big version with the iron clays, but you can get this game and get iron clays, and you're basically at exactly the same place.
Nice. Yeah, that is a beautiful production. All right, cool. So, let's just keep going around. Tiffany, what was your other pick for this list?
So my other pick was one of the best games ever made, and it is surprise, a worker placement, and you are the grand new owner of a thrilling dinosaur theme park, and you are trying to use DNA to create the most exciting dinosaurs that you can. for your park. But the bigger and scarier your dinosaurs are, the bigger their cages have to be, and so the more expensive it is for you to prepare for them. So maybe while you're doing all this preparation for your super awesome, terrifying thrill park, the other players are building herbivore parks, and they're already getting points because it's not nearly as hard to build an herbivore park as it is to build a carnivore park. So it's just you have to decide what kind of park you want to build and which route you want to go, or do you want to kind of diversify and have some herbivores and some carnivores, and what do you want to do, and how are you going to get all the DNA sequences that you need to create these dinosaurs, and are you going to have enough guys to do everything you need to do, or money that you need to do that you're going to need to do what you do. Or it's just a really great tight worker placement game Euro that is super pink and purple and teal and all of the colors of the 80s on one board, along with slap bracelets and pogs if you got certain versions of the game. So, I don't think you can beat a game that comes with a slap bracelet. So that obviously makes it one of the best games in the world, Dinosaur Island.
Before you jumped in with the neon, I think you still hadn't said the name of the game. I was going to jump in with Tiny Epic Dinosaurs or something. Not that there are any crowdfunded Tiny Epic games or anything.
Yeah.
Right.
You can also judge people's childhoods because you say slap bracelet, and people that look at you funny, it's like.
And
what? My kids have slap bracelets. What? Come on.
That's what I'm saying. But I've played with people my age that don't know what slap bracelets are. It's like, do you know what yo-yo is?
And just to be fair, we also back Totally Liquid, which is the expansion. So we have a slap bracelet for Babe to wear and one to mark the first player around.
That's right. Important. We have both.
Right.
Well, you're ready for Halloween. All right. All right, cool. So Dinosaur Island, very colorful production. JJ, what have you got for us?
Let's see. Man, this almost, I believe, competes with the colorfulness here. If nobody's ever played it, it is very much Table Hog. Very much surfer dude. Very much Moana kind of theme here, Polynesian theme. If anybody knows about that, you got islands, you got different polymorphic animals that you can be. You got monsters that you can fight. It's very big, and it's one of the crowdfunded games, and it's actually coming out with an expansion. So it's good. There's a lot going on here. The game is Tidal Blades. If nobody's ever played it, it's a lot. It takes about an hour and a half to explain, but once you start playing, it's probably going to take you another hour and a half just to play the game. So this is one of those all-day games, but you need like 4 tables because there's so much going on. There's like 4 starting islands, and you can be. I think it only plays 4 players, so it's just crazy how much time flies by when you're playing this game. So each one starts as a different animal. I don't remember which all the different animals are now, thinking about it, because the art was very good. But each have an animal that has asymmetrical powers. Guess who likes that? And then each one has a deck of cards, and you start with 3 powers. They have the like suggested 3 starting powers that you can have, but you know me, I gotta have I need to pick. But you have a starting deck, but you only get 3 of those powers to start off with. There's going to be options in the game to like draw cards out of the deck, like draw 2 and keep 1, and then you can get different player powers during the game. And then you're going to move around to the different islands that have different action spaces. Each island has about 3 or 4 different action spaces, and of course, like there's one good one, and then the rest are like go down in value as more people go onto the island. But basically what you want to do is build up it's not like a hand of die, but like a die pool. You want to build up your die pool to go fight monsters. There's other ways to get victory points, like there's ongoing abilities and stuff that get you victory points. But basically what you want to do is build up your die pool, go fight the monsters that come out each round. And that's how you like get the most victory points for the end of the game. and there's like little missions you can do. It's very nice because the little figures that come with it, your player figures that come with it, are very pretty. It's just a gorgeous game. There's a lot going on, but everything's really gorgeous looking. There's a lot of good artwork on the cards, artwork on the boards, the little player pieces. They have your little your score marker that you have that looks like a little statue that looks very pretty. It's a gorgeous game. Every time we play like a convention or something, there's always people like, "Ooh, what's that?" And it's like, this is Tidal Blades, and they've never heard of it, but it's like it's just a great game. It's very much it hurts you if you can't roll die, just to say, because whether you beat the monster or not, you're going to lose some of your die, which is very annoying when you can't win against the monster, because that's how you win the game. So if you suck at die rolling, you're going to suck at this game. That's just basically how it is. So it's very much that. So you're building up your pool, and then you lose all your die, and it's like, okay, well, that's that. But you'll have a gorgeous time playing it. Once again, it's very pretty, and if you like different powers, you'll like this game. And anthropomorphic animals. Tidal Blades.
Well, I have to back you up a little bit here because, I surveyed everybody in the Just Got Played crew about this topic, and Andrew and Cory, who both are publishers who have had crowdfunded projects, funded and delivered games, both of them picked Tidal Blades as their number one for this list as well. They didn't show up to film today. They couldn't make it, but, they got your back on this one.
Plus, you're right. The art is
Cory's
fantastic.
version, and
the art is fantastic. It's absolutely beautiful. You nailed that on the head. And like you said, they turned this into a whole universe. They've since published and completed crowdfunding projects for both a role-playing game and a dungeon crawl. And here shortly is coming up a third game or fourth game, however you want to look at it, in the universe. So they have a whole thing going on with all the artwork and everything. So
I can't imagine what they're going to do with like Tidal Blades 2 or whatever. It's like, what else are you going to add? It's like another
table
or something. Jeez, yeah, for real. It's just, you can't play this on one. I could imagine the table where you just play this one time, because the board, the island area, and your player area, there's just a lot going on. We need like 4 tables when we go to a convention. It's like a convention game.
All right, cool. So, Lloyd, what is your second pick?
Okay, so my second pick, I wanted to go with something that's a little bit, I don't think it's a little bit more obscure. It's very obscure. I don't think, other than you, I don't think anybody else here on this channel has probably even heard of it. But this game, I saw when I went to PAX East, I think. Yeah, I think it was PAX East I saw it. I didn't know it was crowdfunded. They were showing it off there. And this is kind of my King of Tokyo killer, because it does the same thing, but it does it with a theme that I like better. And it's got like a cool toy factor to it that just kind of adds an extra bit of dimension to it. So I got my wrestling shirt. This wrestling is real, because the game that I'm talking about is called Luchador Mexican Wrestling Dice. So it works similar to King of Tokyo. You have a handful of dice, but instead of everyone taking a turn, everyone that's fighting at the same time, and it supports different game modes, but everyone who's fighting at the same time, you take your dice. I think you have 4 dice. You count to 3. We like to do it, since it's Luchador Mexican Wrestling Dice. We uno, dos, tres, and we toss the dice into the ring. So you construct this little 3-dimensional ring, and it's got ropes, and it's elevated up, and it's got like a little floor space. And the basic rules of the game are, when you throw the dice in, they're hitting each other and knocking each other around. If any dice fall outside the ring, you don't get to use those for your turn. So the dice have different symbols on them, and instead of just racking up points like you do with King of Tokyo, you're actually pulling off moves and combos using the dice. So depending on who you want to attack, like I might have a punch die, and somebody else, I might want to attack them because they don't have a block die or counter die. Or you can take those dice, and with, I think, like the second edition of the game, which is the one I have, they introduced all the players have a separate like little holding area for dice, and you can use those to pull off like their signature combos. So you'll need like a punch die and 2 counter die and a block die or whatever mix to pull off this signature move. And the way you beat people, you have to beat them down to a specific life total. And then once they're within that life total, you can then, some of the dice have the pin icon on them. So you can roll a pin die. Once you pin them, they then have to roll dice to kick out. And they have 3 chances to kick out as if it's a wrestling match and they're counting 1, 2, 3. If they can't roll the dice to kick out by the 3rd one, you've pinned them and gotten them out of the game. So the reason why I like it better than King of Tokyo is because King of Tokyo, you can get knocked out in like the first round of the game with a few good rolls if you're stuck in the middle and you have no way to get out. This kind of combats that because you can get down stuck to 1 life and stay in the game and fight your way back if you can roll good enough to get out of the pins. So that's my pick. It's I didn't know it was on crowdfunding until we did this list. But once I saw that it was on there and I owned the game, I was like, I'm definitely talking about that one because I like it so much better than King of Tokyo. It doesn't have any crazy powers like extra cards or symbols, but I like the interaction of the dice. And you can flip the ring over and you can fight in a cage match.
Yes.
So what more can you ask for?
Yes. Cage match. Awesome.
Yeah, I absolutely would play this with you. So yeah, I know what this game is, but I have not played it. Yeah.
That sounds fun. Actually, I'm sorry, Steve, but my problem with King of Tokyo is I feel like nobody fights enough. They just sit around and gather energy and buy cards. But this sounds like this is what I want. I want to roll a bunch of dice and beat up on people. I don't want to gather energy and buy cards. I want to play. Let's play.
Yeah. Let's play live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll bring it to whatever gathering of gamers we do next.
Yeah. So it's interesting, though, that you said you didn't know this was this was a crowdfunded title. And I think while we were researching this, we found a bunch of things that were like, really? That was crowdfunded? And some of them, was sort of questionable whether they're crowdfunded, just bringing over a English version or, maybe a reprint or something, maybe not exactly the spirit of crowdfunding, even though technically it was. But I was surprised to see that Sushi Go actually had a small, just a few $1,000 Indiegogo project. That's like what is that, Phil Walker Harding or something?
Yeah.
Sushi Go. Yeah. I don't know. I was surprised, like, wow, that's how that game started. No kidding. You don't know unless you know, right?
Just a couple $1,000 or whatever. And now it's everywhere. It's ubiquitous.
Yeah. And I mean, some of those early games like Cards Against Humanity and stuff were just getting a few $1,000 and then just, they've gone on to a life of their own. But, so my second pick, though, is a game which has also sort of taken on a life of its own. And that is from Thunderworks Games. I think it is Role Player. So Role Player not only was the original, a crowdfunded project by almost 1,000 people, but then the first expansion, Monsters and Minions, and then the legendary box with Fiends and Foes or whatever those were Kickstarter projects. There was Lockup, which is a completely different game, but based in this universe, was a crowdfunded campaign, and a Role Player Adventures, again, another game that's still in this same universe. And even, I guess, Cartographers is themed in this universe, right? So there's this whole universe that has sort of spread out from Role Player. But just Role Player by itself is a really good game. I just played this recently at the con. Somebody wanted to play it who'd never played it before. They checked it out of the library and it was just the base game. I always prefer to play with Monsters and Minions. Like, it feels like it should have been in the base game, and it's easy to teach with the base game. So that's how I recommend playing it. But even just the base game is fun, right? You're pulling dice out of a bag and then rolling those dice, and they're getting prioritized on these spots. And if you want to take the higher number die, you can, but then you go in lore order, or you go later in turn order for buying things out of the market. So the cool stuff in the market, the armor and weapons and skills and traits that you want or need, those are going to be gone if you take these high number dice, but you need the higher number dice to really achieve these attribute levels, and you need certain colors of dice to match certain patterns or to match your player color or whatever. There's just so much going on. And, at the end of the day, you're just rolling up a character. right? You know,
Yes.
you're taking drafting dice and placing them on your board to make a character, and then you've got all these that extra stuff, you know, armor, weapons, traits, and skills and stuff that I mentioned to go along with it. And you just do that, and you score it, and it's a whole lot of fun. I mean, I really just enjoy this game, and I think some people think it's sort of maybe simple, right? They're just like, oh, you're just rolling up a character, and then you teach it to them and you play it, and they're like, oh yeah, there's a lot of decisions to unpack when you're playing that game. Particularly, it's got that sort of indirect interaction where you want to make sure that you're going ahead of somebody in the market because they're going to take that thing you want, or maybe they're going to decide, hey, they just need money that round, so they're going to throw away that thing you need, that, you know, third chain set piece you're looking for or whatever, right? So there's definitely some player interaction here, even though it's more of the indirect kind of direct. But yeah, role player that has spawned its own universe.
So just a quick note to this, we haven't actually taken our role player adventures out of Shrink yet, but if I remember correctly, you can use role player to roll up a character to then use in role player adventures, and that's a nice linking of the themes in the universe there. So
yeah, you don't have to, and I was expecting it to work better than I've heard reports of it. Like I've heard some people say that they took their characters that they made and because you're trying to win that game rather than maybe roll up a character
then
necessarily,
min-max it or something, right?
That it's maybe not as cool as just one of the pre-rolled characters that comes with role player adventures.
Gotcha.
But still, I bet it's fun either way. Yeah. Cool. I would like to hear about role player adventures as soon as you get a chance to get to the table.
We'll get there.
But I'm going to assume that was not your second pick.
It was not my second pick. And viewers at home, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going rogue. So I'm telling you, I'm supposed to talk about Gloomhaven. But quite frankly, I've talked about Gloomhaven in about 50 videos. So I don't want to talk about Gloomhaven anymore, because you can go watch one of the other videos in which I talk about Gloomhaven and how awesome it is. And it's my number one game of all time. But like I said, enough about Gloomhaven. What I'm actually going to talk about is Xayah, Legends of a Drift System. I love this game. It's probably the first real sandbox game that I played and fell in love with. There's different versions of this now. Like Western Legends is basically the same thing, but it's in the Wild West. You know, like, so the sandbox thing kind of picked up, but this one's basically it's in a system, a solar system that it's made up. It's out, in space somewhere. But basically, you can do whatever you want. You want to attack the other players and steal their stuff? You can do that. You want to just be a merchant and take things back and forth? You can do that. You want to just mine asteroids and go sell the stuff? You can do that. And meanwhile, there's NPCs in the game. Like, there's basically a bad guy who will fly around and try to attack you and take your stuff. And there's also the cop that will also fly around and try to protect you or shoot you if you're a bad guy. And it seems very complicated because there's like this whole page of what happens if, because basically there's all these different, we'll call them dangers out there. Like, if you go into an asteroid, you need to roll a die. And if you roll 1 to 10, you die. And if you roll 11 to 20, you don't die. You make it through. And then there's all these different classifications of things going on out there. And you make the board as you go. So basically, you start at the very center of the solar system, and depending upon whether you've got the expansion going or not, which was also crowdfunded, you either start like at the sun, basically, or, I think it's a space station, maybe, that the expansion does is technically what it is. But the point is, like, you kind of go out from there. So you might actually find a planet that produces a certain kind of a product, but you haven't found the planet yet that wants that kind of a product. So there's a whole lot of exploration in this as well. At the end of the day, it's the same tile, so it's just going to end up in different configurations. But there's an explore to this where, and one of the cool things about this game is you can take a blind jump. But if you blind jump into an asteroid, all of a sudden you're rolling a die and you might die. You might blind jump into the sun, and that's just an auto death. So, but if you don't blind jump, then you're really hobbled trying to get around and explore. So it just goes right along with this game, which is very, I want to say it's gambly almost, because like this, I'm going to blind jump, never know, well, I might as well try to crash through these asteroids, might die, never know. But it's, it's not that big of a deal because unlike, games like King of Tokyo where you get knocked out and you're out, you just get knocked out and then you come back a turn later, basically, and you start going again. And the game plays until you basically set a set number of what you want to call fame points. And whoever reaches that point first wins the game. But it's variable because you can say, well, we only have 45 minutes to play. We'll play to 7 points. And then you play to that. Or you can say, you know what? Let's make a day of Zaya. And we're going to play to 30. And that'll take a long time for someone to get to 30 points. So I just absolutely love this game. It's hard to get to the table because it's such a big experience going on. And I feel like the teach is almost worse than the game itself because it's not that hard, really. Like if you go in here, you roll a die. You might die, you might not, kind of a thing. But to explain every little bit of this thing going on kind of takes some time and it might get a little bit confusing. But the overall experience is fantastic. I know Babe loves playing Zaya also. Like I said, we have a hard time getting to the table. It's kind of a lot. But once you get it out there and play, everybody leaves going, well, that was a lot of fun. That's awesome. So I love Zaya.
Yeah, I think this is another one of those games that just could not have existed without crowdfunding.
I agree.
Right? I mean, it's grandiose. Getting this thing produced and into distribution and into retail and the price point that would be at, and then just the sheer amount of funds you would have needed to front the initial production run, which probably would have been smaller and therefore more expensive. Like, I mean, Gloomhaven actually probably is in the same boat, actually.
Yeah,
games like that probably just would not exist without this.
Especially at the time that Zaya came out.
A year ahead of time.
If this had been on Kickstarter or GameFound now, it'd just be another one of these big old games with a whole lot of cool stuff going on. But when this came out, all the little ships come pre-painted. Like it's high, high luxury here in Zaya. And that's every game. It's not like your Kickstarter game has extra stuff that the retail doesn't. Like it's all in there. It's fantastic. I love it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we all did 2 games, right?
Yes.
I got all the way around. Didn't miss anybody. I mean, I tried to miss some people, but you guys just jumped in anyway. I don't know what happened. So anyway, there is 10 great crowdfunded games as chosen by us, the Just Got Played crew. I'm Steven. That's Lloyd. We got Erock. We got Tiffany. We got JJ. And tell us in the comments below or in our Discord channel, which is, listed in the description of this video. Come tell us what your favorite crowdfunded games are. Tell us what you think of the ones we picked. Tell us what you think about my crowdfunding rant. Don't at me. But yeah. And, give us a like if you like the video. Subscribe to our channel. We make stupid stuff like this all the time. So just, follow along with us. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all.
Have a great night.